to try to improve patients' treatment was the heterogeneity among data across Europe. It was impossible to link the experience in France or in Spain, the one in UK or in Italy. So we need to establish dedicated funding for data harmonization across Europe. We need to invest in electronic health data infrastructure and to have secure data sharing. We have new methodology like the federated learning we use in Orchestra. We link together 10 different countries, 82 cohorts, and this was very successful. And we need novel methodology to analyze data like simulation trial. So we believe this is the moment and the right momentum to consolidate and enlarge the European infrastructure for long COVID that will build with European funding. And now we need to integrate this infrastructure into the pandemic preparedness plans, where member states are working today and will be starting in January 2026. If we decide to activate infrastructure for long COVID, waiting for the next pandemic will be too late. So what Europe can do? 5 simple points. Recognize long COVID, empower patients, invest in European registry and cohort, create multidisciplinary care pathway and invest in telemedicine, and ensure equity across member states. This is our website, so I know information were not enough. Whatever other details on the top of what we discussed today, you can go to our website. And this is my last message. Ignoring long COVID, it's not a scientific inevitability. It's a political choice. And Europe now must choose to recognize, research, train, and respond to long COVID, because it's not only to protect patients today, but it's to prepare for tomorrow pandemics. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Professor Tacconelli. It was a really good and in-depth introduction to the topic, and we will really distribute also this presentation, which is very useful. I would like you to stay here, maybe, to invite the rest of the speakers of the first panel, and then at the end of the first panel, if we have time, we will do a Q&A together with you. So I would like to introduce the first panel, which is focusing on policy responses at European level on long COVID. And the objective of it is to illustrate the initiatives on long COVID that have been and currently being realized by the European Commission, the World Health Organization and OECD, both independently and in partnership, and will also at national level, in this case by the Belgian government. The speakers will have 7 minutes. I will try to send you messages if you are exceeding the time. And thank you so much. They are all here. First of all, I would like to start by Stefan Schreck. He's advisor for stakeholder relations on Public Health Directorate at DG Sante at the European Commission. He has a long career in public health within the European institutions, including as head of health unit in the Executive Agency for Health and Consumers, head of health information unit of DG Sanco, and head of DG Sante unit health program and chronic diseases. Thank you so much, and the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, distinguished guests. My thanks to the European Parliament for organizing this important workshop on long COVID. Yes, as was mentioned already, for most of us, the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic already faded. Nevertheless, for too many, the long-term consequences are still very real. And if it affects millions of Europeans, around 17 million have been estimated across the EU that have been affected only in the first 2 years of the pandemic alone. And the negative impact that long COVID has on those affected, as well as our health systems and our economies, is really pronounced and significant. And only through shared dialogue and collective action can we strengthen our efforts and advance towards impactful solutions in addressing long COVID. Our understanding of long COVID is now far greater, yes, and Professor Tacconelli also referred to that, and yet we still need to better understand its complexity and how to treat it effectively. So we need impactful solutions indeed, and they are indispensable to ensure that EU citizens and member states are stronger and well prepared for the far-reaching consequences of long COVID. So we are pleased to share that the network of expertise on long COVID under the Commission Expert Group on Public Health was set up by DG Santé 2 years ago, in 2023, with financial support of 2 million euros. And the network by now is bringing together 39 institutions from 21 member states, plus Iceland, and has worked closely with the Commission to define 7 key priorities for this project. These 7 actions are carried out in close collaboration with OECD and WHO, both represented here today, to promote international collaboration and strengthen EU and national responses to long COVID, and of course also to create synergies and to avoid duplication of work here in this area. So regular updates take place to ensure progress, alignment, and the avoidance of duplication. The 7 actions are designed to address the multifaceted impacts of long COVID, encompassing clinical, social, economic, and research dimension. First, we are establishing a collaborative framework to guide long COVID research, identifying urgent gaps and ensuring that findings translate into effective policies. On the research side, I want to highlight that the Commission has invested over 100 million euros to support studies on COVID-19 under Horizon Europe. Second, we are launching an EU-wide training program to equip healthcare professionals with the knowledge to recognize early symptoms, provide accurate diagnosis, and ensure timely patient referrals. Another priority is improving clinical guidelines, ensuring that member states have access to the latest evidence-based recommendations for long COVID management. At the same time, we are working to enhance patient engagement, fostering stronger involvement from stakeholders and citizens to improve the quality of life of those affected. And that is why an open stakeholder group on long COVID was launched in February this year to give a voice to patients affected by long COVID and their caregivers. Additionally, understanding the social and economic consequences of long COVID is equally essential. By assessing its far-reaching consequences, we can better inform policy decisions and strengthen support systems across the EU. A unified case definition is also something that really needs to be improved, and we are also working on that because it's an important step to ensure consistency in diagnosis, treatment, and data collection. Finally, to better understand the scale and prevalence of long COVID, we are also working towards a surveillance system in the future. As you can see, a lot is happening within the long COVID community at European level. These efforts clearly show that collaboration is essential to the success of tackling long COVID. Today, you will hear more detailed insights from OECD and WHO on these 7 actions, their implementation, and the impact they aim to achieve. What is also really important is maintaining momentum, and that's why this meeting is so important here, not just now, but also in the future, because this is really a long-term problem we are facing here. The commitment of the long COVID community, from researchers and healthcare providers to civil society organizations, is pivotal to meeting this need. So I'm confident that if we are working together, we will help to address long COVID for the benefit of the millions of patients and their families suffering from it. Thank you. I hope that was less than 7 minutes.
It was. Thank you so much, Mr. Schreck. Very concrete and with a lot of insights from the work done until now and the work ahead that needs to be done. So now I would like to give the floor to Federico Guanais, Deputy Head of Health Division at the OECD. In this position, he has led work on patient-reported indicators, health statistics, people-centered care, climate and health, and support to health reforms. So thank you, and the floor is yours now. You have a presentation, so you will have it.
Thank you very much, MP Bayerin Cereza. Thank you to the Secretariat and to all members of this session that come here today. It's really a great privilege to talk to you about this topic. We were fortunate to be collecting data precisely at the time when this crisis was happening. And then we're fortunate that we're included questions about long COVID on a survey that went out to 109,000 patients in 19 countries, right? So it's probably the largest international survey with comparable data that includes questions about long COVID. And then it's remarkable to see the consistency of this information across countries. And even more remarkable that this continues to be sort of an invisible illness. So we think that the Paris data showed that long COVID remains prevalent. At the time of the survey, 5% of the respondents had symptoms, were still experiencing symptoms. And here we're talking about a population 45 years and older who had used primary care in the previous 6 months, right? So many others who were not even there also could be included in that computation. So this is something that addressing the burden of long COVID remains a necessity. As Professor Tacconelli was saying, a previous study estimated $1 trillion US dollars of economic impacts of long COVID without even counting the direct cost of care. But we're working on that to update that figure. And I'm going to give you a brief overview of the OECD work streams on that. There's lots of text in those slides. I'm not going to read this, but you can circulate the slides afterwards so you can examine in more detail. We had a kickoff conference of this project here in Brussels in September 2024 when the OECD was invited by the Commission, and thanks Stefan for the references to us, to participate together with WHO Europe in this project on long COVID. So it was very clear that we need more and better data, and that's when the Paris data really came in very, very timely because we included 11 EU countries in this data collection of the 19 countries. So this allowed us to generate very important insights. So just a few findings. We found that 7% of primary care patients who had ever had COVID experienced long COVID symptoms, and 5% of the overall Paris population were still experiencing symptoms at the time of the survey, even for maybe several months and even a year after the episode of COVID. So this varies between 4% in Greece to 11% in Norway, but still it's within the international range of what's being reported. So it gives a lot of confidence that this is patient-reported data, that we're listening directly to the patients. So we heard a lot about patient-centeredness and empowerment, and we're very, very proud that we're actually able to hear directly from the patients. We found that many important impacts, that, for example, long COVID doubles your risk of having severe fatigue. We found that 1 in 8 respondents with long COVID were unemployed or on sick leave at the time of the survey. And then there's many other results that you can examine in our reports. But then, of course, it's not only about diagnosing and confirming the information that had already been detected in national country studies, but also providing support to action. So, for example, training for health professions. So in this, we're very proud to be working very closely together with WHO Europe to develop a free and accessible platform for training course dedicated to providers, which in that training course is planned for release in the first quarter of 2026. So the training course of long COVID essentials is aimed at the primary healthcare workers to support precisely those difficult topics of the diagnosis, management, and communication to patients with long COVID. So we really, really hope that this will be able to be a platform to disseminate the good practices. The second action that I'd like to mention to you is the policy mapping survey, which is also included within this project. We launched a survey of national initiatives for long COVID in the EU to measure the current landscape, the progress, and the remaining challenges for health systems in 2025. We collected data from 11 EU members and 5 additional OECD countries that have provided responses. Just some provisional findings. I promise there will be much more when the study is completed. But for example, I can give you some previews that only half of the countries surveyed have a standard care pathway for long COVID patients in place or under consideration. 2 out of 3 countries have no specific training development for healthcare workers about long COVID. And 3 out of 4 countries have produced national clinic guidelines, but that means that there's the 25% of countries that have not developed guidelines yet. Another very important point, as Professor Tacconelli was mentioning very kindly, assessing the social and economic consequences of long COVID. In that previous study, we preliminarily assessed that $1 trillion per year, but now we want to refine this estimate also to include the healthcare costs, but also loss of productivity and the social welfare loss and additional payments due to disability spending. We will provide projections using our strategic public health planning model, which is one of the state-of-the-art microsimulation tools that we have to provide very, very complete impacts and the costs of how much long COVID is costing to European societies and economies. So the model will also consider the broader social impacts of COVID, including, for example, assessing the impact on the educational attainment and protective effect of vaccination. And then finally, I hope to have given you a clear overview of what we're doing. Like I said, this is just a teaser from the project that we are very happy to be collaborating with WHO Europe, and we're keen to hear from them as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Guanay. Our next speaker is Aliya Kozbayeva, Technical Officer at the Health Workforce and Service Delivery Unit at the World Health Organization Europe. She leads the coordination of WHO Europe Long COVID project, working to advance understanding on the condition and to develop evidence-based policy guidance for member states. Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Honorable members of Parliament, dear colleagues and distinguished guests and participants of this meeting, it's a privilege to present here and to be here, and it's very important that the meeting is highlighting the importance of public health and economical consequences of this condition. And well, we understand that acute phase has gone, but still the effect is still hundreds of millions of people are feeling, and it has a huge impact, and that my previous speakers already highlighted, and it's really nice to see the synergy of the key messages. Basically, it's not yet yesterday. Health is under the threat. Security is another issue. Productivity, as we were just discussing with the OECD, social participation, and generally resilience of healthcare systems of the work. And we understand that long COVID affects about 6 people from those who contracted, from 100 of contracted COVID condition. And for some, this condition brings huge debilitating conditions, and that situation should be always remembered and not be forgotten with new challenges that we all experiencing today, not only in public and social sphere, but in general. So, and keep that momentum is very important, because they are not able to study, to work, to live full life. So, and this challenge strikes the core public trust, and citizens look for government, government looks for EU and WHO for the recognition of this condition and what else can be done and how efforts should be or can be united. As we were asked to be around the kind of stream of work that we are implementing together under the SANTE and with OECD, these are bold points, they are kind of priorities that for the work of WHO. It's about optimizing definition, establishing surveillance for long COVID, research needs and priorities, and providing support. And this is as we already mentioned, we work together with OECD, very closely interlinked our activities with the engagement of NELC group and other stakeholders and patient groups. So one of these is about optimizing case definition and about contributing to consolidated current knowledge. And I'm really pleased to hear that the previous speakers basically covered the ground for the discussion here, or the way of thinking that our understanding has significantly improved and continues to evolve, but still there is no specific biomarker to have a clear diagnostic and treating kind of pathways to be kind of very precise and evidence-based. That's why clinical management is still based on the best practices rather than evidence, solid evidence. That makes it kind of critical but difficult to update clinical epidemiological case definition, considering that the evolution of the data and the knowledge of this condition. And that's WHO was holding global webinar series sharing best practices with the patients and provider experiences. And this is based on the previous work that WHO came up with the definitions right in the beginning of the COVID pandemic in 2021 with some of the revision in 2023. As we were talking about, the surveillance is another important area, and that's how we try to do, and also addressing not only issue of for WHO, the agenda is not only purely EU member states, but the bigger geographical spread and lower and upper middle income countries where the situation is even worse or unknown as such in a bigger stances. So, and that's, we are trying to address that and trying to do these prospective studies and to see the burden in epidemiology of these long COVID patients among patients hospitalized. And this is one in Albania. And the study will describe the incidence factors associated with long COVID among those patients hospitalized. And we hope that the findings will provide critical information in the region slightly beyond and close to EU members, the core EU member states, that will also contribute to global, bigger knowledge sharing and experience. Then we also, again, this is a publication, cover page of the publication of 24, when we were trying to address and find out what are the service provision in different countries, several countries, at which point we understood that every country went its own way, try to address based on their kind of system, how it exists, how it's spread, and how the multidisciplinarity works. And yet it's also confirmed that the most affected are also healthcare workers. And based on that, we try to estimate and describe the burden of long COVID among healthcare workers who were the frontline workers and still suffering, or they need to change their life path or career choices because of this condition. And yet we also understand that the knowledge or understanding of this condition is very skeptical among, including healthcare workers. Therefore, we'll also aim to explore the knowledge, attitude, and practices among them. And probably, and this is, we are starting October 25 and hoping that this knowledge will also provide some additional tools for training purposes of healthcare workers and address their disbeliefs or stigma or some other unknown areas. And as we were mentioning that we can't do everything alone, and this is a predicament to do and work in a close collaboration, and that's what we are doing and trying to establish the connection with the cohorts or the work that based on Orchestra, VEBIS, European CDC, EU CARE consortium with bigger geographical spread, and also other partners in these countries of our region. As well, it was mentioned that it's altogether contributing to the research needs and priorities, but rehabilitation in the absence of absolutely solid evidence-based kind of approach, and it's seen that rehabilitation practices are helping to the patients. We are trying to establish research agenda for rehabilitation of adults with long COVID. And right now, right today, our working group and technical working group having another meeting. So based on systematic literature research, we were trying to map these kind of potential research areas that will work out, and with the WHO expert group that meeting today, we will come up to certain conclusions. And this is also in collaboration with Cochrane Rehabilitation Advisory Group to address those recommendations. And basically, as we were mentioning before, we need to provide support to the patients. And we organized this informal working group, and we mapped out about 60 civil society organizations. And these meetings were conducted to hear the voices, to prioritize the kind of issues that needs to be potentially addressed. And that survey was conducted and identify the common myths and ranking those myths and social listening report. So, and you can see those kind of general consideration and confusions among people, and there are myths about that being young or being obese can improve or worsen your condition, and we will try to address that in the campaign to counter those myths and misinformation. and providing with the facts, debunk the myth and explain the tactic behind those myths and repeat the truth. And that's to contribute to the understanding. In conclusion, I would also try to highlight that it's not only about the past, but also how we build the resilience in the future, not only for this pandemic, but they will come for sure in the future. So how we will be ready for that, that's up to us and our coordinated approach here. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope I managed.
You managed. Thank you so much, Mrs. Kozbayeva. Really interesting also insights. I take the last sentence. We check the past, also the present, because we need to give hope to the patients, but also preparing for the future. And very good point on the myths and the disinformation campaigns that we have to tackle, besides all the other things. So I would like now to pass the floor to Mr. Castanares, coming a medical expert from the Belgian Healthcare Knowledge Center. So, yeah, you have the floor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good afternoon. And thank you for the invitation to share the policy response of Belgium to long COVID. I will present it in the next few minutes. So we all know that the crisis linked to long COVID is not over yet, and as referred by Professor Tacconelli, prevalence is still high. For example, in Belgium, a recent survey from our Institute of Public Health called Cienzano reported that 4% of people had symptoms 3 months after the primary infection, so this year. As already mentioned also by Professor Tacconelli, the clinical heterogeneity is really a challenge to build up healthcare pathway, and that's why Europe advocates for an harmonized approach, particularly regarding the definition, the management, and the surveillance system. End of 2020, the Belgian Healthcare Knowledge Center was asked to develop a policy-orienting report, first summarizing the knowledge on long COVID, it was the beginning, and then providing recommendation for policymakers about which health care services were required to treat patients with long COVID. So we first focused on the review of definition, epidemiology of long COVID, but already with the underlying pathophysiology of long COVID. Afterwards, we launched a national survey to determine patient experience and unmet needs. It was complemented by in-depth interview of patients, and we reviewed the national legislation and current reimbursement rules to propose adaptation. There were, of course, nationwide concurrent initiatives. Among them, we can mention the development of clinical practice guidelines, governmental guidelines. Our Institute of Public Health developed several projects, for example, the COVIMPACT project that established a first cohort of patients tested positive for SARS-CoV-2 and then followed the mental, physical, and social outcomes over time. More broadly, the second project, Helicon project, studied the impact of the COVID-19 crisis in Belgium on social and health outcomes, including also non-COVID comorbidities and the use of healthcare in Belgium. And finally, the KCA trial. KCA trial is a department of our institution. That's a funding program developing a proof of concept non-commercial clinical trials. And 3 clinical trials in 2021 were developed and started. First one on pulmonary rehabilitation, so the role of active physiotherapy. The second one focused on patients with neurocognitive problems. And the third one studied the combination of patient-adapted physiotherapy program and optimization therapy. So there were no pharmacological trial, as you can notice. And in practice, an interdisciplinary care pathway was developed by our National Institute of Health and Disability Insurance. It was done through a consultation process with clinicians, academics, patients, of course, healthcare professional association, health insurance funds, and it was inspired by the KCE recommendation and in line, of course, with the national guidelines. The aim is not to describe the whole care pathway, but just a few details. So the pathway includes several services: physiotherapy, neuropsychology, nutritional therapy, and occupational therapy. Psychological services are also available when needed, of course. And so, in practice, diagnosis is made by the general practitioner or the hospital specialist, and a treatment plan adapted to the patient need is proposed. The general practitioner, so the first line, plays a central role because all the healthcare providers need to report back to the general practitioner to ensure that the follow-up is okay with the patient. And this is, of course, fully covered by our national insurance. So to conclude, what are the perspectives and the current challenges? First, we reported an under-expected use of this clinical care pathway. So we need to work on a better dissemination of information. Unmet needs. We are all aware of unmet needs, and of course research and innovative curative treatments this time are required. Belgium is at the present time working on a coordination of specialized structures that mean reference centers in hospitals, and we think to expand this care pathway to multiple similar chronic conditions. And finally, as already mentioned by the previous speaker, data collection and longitudinal follow-up are necessary to be improved. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Castañares, as the medical expert at Belgian Healthcare Knowledge Center, which provides scientific advice on healthcare-related topics to the Belgian government. Thank you for this intervention. Now we have 5-10 minutes, so it's not a lot to have a short Q&A session. I think it's also important to hear the audience. So I would like to ask. I would like to do one round of questions like this, and then you will answer, okay? Because if not, it will take too much time. Yes, please. You can introduce yourself and questions very short, please. And Mike.
Yes, my name is Stella Veliki. I have studied physics and informatics, and I'm a member of the European Physical Society. I have very short question. First is for Madame Professor. What for organs are not touched by COVID? I know that it's lungs, that it's heart, but I don't know for the other organs that it's touched by COVID and long COVID. And together with this, do you know more how COVID appears in China? Because the dictatorial government in China don't give no data, no explanation, and we don't know from where COVID is coming. The other question is for the monsieur from European Commission. I'm very happy to hear that the European Commission has a European plan for the pandemic time, and I want to know if you have more details concerning this plan, and how do you use new technology to detect long COVID and COVID by the people. What I give an example to understand more that it's not the reality. So I'm thinking to a tool that every doctor can have it on his PC to see and have the patient and write all the symptoms from this patient, and this tool with using artificial intelligence give him an answer. These people can have 60% long COVID or not. So it's only an example. And last question is for all the people. How can we press China to pay money for all this COVID pandemic and all this damage that they have, they do it. They are the second economical power in the world. They have a lot of money to pay it, but nobody is speaking about it.
Thank you so much. More questions? Please.
Hi, good afternoon. My name's Anna Bullock and I work in the European Investment Bank on health and also EU preparedness. So this is obviously relevant in that capacity. But actually, if you don't mind, my question's more of a personal nature. My husband has had long COVID for the past 5.5 years. He is still housebound and most of the time bedbound, and obviously it's not been easy. All of your interventions were very relevant and very useful, so thank you. The thing that kind of struck me most was information myths and misinformation that happens. It happens with healthcare providers, obviously more so at the beginning of the pandemic when little was known, but still to this day there are healthcare providers that we come across who either reject the idea almost in its entirety or have don't understand concepts such as pacing or other kind of or the ways that long COVID works. Or we've seen psychologists who basically say, oh yeah, it's all kind of psychological, it's all in your head and I can help you. And, I could give lots of examples. There is a lot of skepticism still in healthcare, but obviously we've come across fantastic practitioners as well. I still don't feel like we have that my husband is getting a holistic approach, but as his GP learns more, at least there's something. I don't think it's enough, and of course it's still down to us to really find who to go to and where. And the Belgian, you were talking about the pathway. I mean, we read about the pathway at the beginning, but it's not something, when it first was introduced, but it's not something that I see in evidence in any of my husband's treatment. But I was interested in what the person from the WHO Europe was saying, particularly on misinformation and on a campaign, because I can envisage how we can get information to trickle down within the healthcare, for example, a healthcare system, for example. But in the general public, it's also needed as well. I mean, my husband has skeptics among his friends. He's lost friends. There's so much misinformation and there's so much skepticism that it really affects people's quality of life, because people become more isolated because people surrounding them don't understand what it is that they're actually going through. So yeah, and obviously my husband's not the only one. We hear that millions of people are suffering. So really, it's just to think about how information can really trickle down to everybody. I can see there's a lot of effort in making sure this information is disseminated at institutional levels, but how does it really trickle down to the general public as well?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes, please.
Yes, good evening, citizens. My name is Angelos Charlaftis, Epavos Advisors. We are working with gerontology geriatrics in a European level. And the question I have to answer to the lady about the detection, about the future pandemics, that we already at the SERIS community, at the European Commission, we are having some standards, trying to organize some standards with teams which are going to a place where we have some information about any kind of pandemic. It's a full team and going there and staying 2-3 days, and they have all the analysis, the laboratory analysis and all the response in order to send the information to the central administrations to see if it is a pandemic or not. Secondary, do you believe as scientists and as administrations that the experimentation with some vaccines which were produced for the pandemic has any relation with the post-COVID consequences? And also, do we know in any kind of study that these post-COVID maladies are from vaccines or without vaccines?
Thank you so much. I think one last question, very short, because we are running out of time.
Thank you. My name is Jens Jäger. I work for the Helmholtz Association of German Research Centers. I liked very much that several of you pointed out sort of possible solutions, and I was wondering whose responsibility is it to put them into practice? I heard about standards and better coordination, and maybe I can sort of get you to be a little less diplomatic, because I'd like to know whom do we need to lobby as the scientific community to make this a reality? Is it medical associations, healthcare insurance, policymakers? I'm unsure.
Thank you. One short last one.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Petra Klaas. I'm a medical doctor working here in Parliament for the Medical Preparedness and Crisis Management Unit. My question is for the future. If we want to avoid for this next pandemics as well, the number of people infected, I think it would be interesting to understand better how contact tracing and thus also prevention from having other new patients can be linked with the health data that we are going to share in the near future. Because there lies to me really a point where we could have done better if we had the right IT tools. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very interesting questions. I will give the floor first to Professor Taconelli. You had several of them. After to the European Commission, and later the rest of the colleagues to really address only the topics not covered for the others. Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, thanks for the question. We are really important question, and we would deserve hours to really answer. So also for the sake of time and for giving the others the possibility to speak, I will try to summarize in short sentences some of this question. First of all, I think several of these questions are related to pandemic preparedness. And I do agree that today it's in the discussion between member states, the European Parliament and the European Commission, how to organize funding for preparedness. And in this funding from preparedness, I think that one of the most important issues, which would link several of your questions, would be to be able to use homogenized data across all European countries. This means common data to be shared. Today, this is in Europe not possible. And I think if we would have a chance to understand, not at the end of the first year, the first patients, because as a clinician, I knew that cortisone was a good drug. I knew that long COVID was present in my patients, but I needed more than 1 year just to have the proof, because it was impossible to link data. So I think one of the first issues would be just to have priority funding for data homogeneity and for data sharing, because again, today the GDPR is killing the data sharing among European countries. So that's the first point. Second point, and then I stop. I understand community is afraid about epidemic. I understand this epidemic is connected with specific countries, but as an infectious disease specialist, I know that the history has been full of epidemics. It's one of the reasons why I chose infectious disease indeed, because I know that there will be always something to do to help population. So I think for the future, we need to work on how to collaborate because that is really making a change for the future. And I stop here.
Thank you so much. Mr. Rzek?
Yes, thank you. So I was asked about the pandemic plan at EU level. Yes, indeed, there will be a pandemic plan at EU level and is currently under consultation. There have been always the request at the EU level for member states to have a pandemic preparedness plan, but the last pandemic, when it really struck, highlighted also the need to have something at European level that is under preparation at the moment. Yes, and then the other question was, what does the Commission do to provide something like an AI-powered diagnostic tool? I don't think that we will ever do that ourselves. We are actually already fostering the development of AI tools in the health arena. I'm not sure that I know about everything, but I know that we are doing this in the area of cancer. And I mean, given the legal position of the European Union in the area of healthcare, it would not be possible for us to impose on member states the use of any particular tool. But if we would have something that would facilitate diagnosis in the area of long COVID, and that would be available, and we would certainly be able to discuss it among our expert group, the NELC, the Network of Expertise on Long COVID, so that member states can learn from each other using that. So we could actually do something which is very practical if ever such an AI tool would be available, but I didn't actually hear about that. I also want to refer to misinformation. Actually, there was a lot of misinformation in this whole pandemic about COVID-19, about the vaccines and about long COVID. And we tested all kinds of things actually to address this, and it is really very difficult. There's a lot of information around now which does come from non-traditional sources, in particular in the area of health, and it is very difficult to address this. But I would say this really requires a separate sort of discussion. Yes. What else? Yes, on the question of vaccines might be also the cause of long COVID symptoms. There I can only say that we have a very robust system in the European Union for the approval of vaccines and for the surveillance of the side effects of vaccines, and that was super active. I've seen that myself during the pandemic. From the perspective of DG Santé, and there I'm sure that what can be known about the reasons for long COVID that can of course develop, but it doesn't seem that vaccines actually have a role in causing it. I think that was the questions for me.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Kozbayeva, you want to address something on the misinformation maybe?
I think for the myth we have touched upon, it's a huge ocean of activities, and how you may influence that or control that. It's a very complex, not easy, and that's understood by many, and how it can be misused. Just to add, for the pandemic kind of preparation within EU, but WHO, it's not my field of work, but this May, with all ministries of health who are gathering once a year, the first after. Maybe if COVID brought something, it's about pandemic kind of plan that now finally being approved and agreed, at least with the member states. Even coming to this understanding that we need to agree that it takes a lot of effort to bring over like close to 200 member states to agree upon that. And this has happened this year, so that's another kind of example of international kind of collaboration, despite all the different approaches and political or different views. So this is possible. It's only beginning, but still it's there that to be applied for the better good for global health. Just adding to that, and I think, and that's partially replying to the question how we control of number of people. So these are kind of aspects that how we are preparing for future pandemics, and infection diseases are all around us, and it's not the last one to be. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Wanais, you want to add something, please?
Thank you. I'd like to address the question that Anna Pollock mentioned. Very moving, very touching, personal statement. I think that for long COVID is a great example of patient advocacy pushing for a topic that was not being heard. So this was an excellent, and we cite this in several reports that we did, one on people-centered health systems. And we are very happy to contribute to that when we have data from the Paris survey, patient-reported indicator survey. It's reported by the patients themselves, 109,000 patients in 19 countries. And in every single country, the prevalences are very much aligned around the 7% average mark that we found. So this is a real issue. It affects patient-reported outcomes. It affects patient-reported experiences of care. We can show that the health systems are not prepared to address the needs of these patients. So we do hope that this hard data will actually contribute to that. And then to what Jan said, that the times are difficult, value for money is more important than ever, so finding the evidence-based policy solutions, and then you can go and lobby the health insurance and the payers to actually implement the things that matter, I think that's going to be something important. So, I would start with those. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that I was asked about the scientific evidence underlying the healthcare pathway. So each state needs to prepare its healthcare pathway and to update it according to the new scientific evidence. And I think that's a role of each health and technology assessment agencies in the countries.
Thank you so much. I think we close the first panel here. I would like to thank all the panelists for their interventions, the audience for the good questions, and I think we had a very interesting first panel with a lot of insights. So I would like now to immediately introduce the panel 2. So I ask, thank you so much. I would like to invite the moderator to join me on the podium, Mr. Nicolás González Casares. He is Member of Parliament, also coming from Spain, member of STOA panel and of Sant Committee. He is himself a healthcare worker with 20 years of experience, specialized in emergency care. The focus of his activity in the European Parliament focuses on pandemic response, including the European Vaccination Strategy and also Pharma Package, Critical Medicines Act. So I'm very grateful for his role in his workshop. Gracias, Nicolás. And this is a very good sign of synergies between STOA and Sant Committee, which was recently created as an autonomous committee and will have one additional member in STOA. So I leave you with the second panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura, and thank you to the STOA Secretariat for organizing this event. And I have to say thank you again to Laura because she was very interested in organizing this panel and this very important event. And after this first roundtable, we know more about long COVID, and we know that we have to put in place more strategies in order to solve the situation of a lot of patients across Europe. So thank you so much for your very important work on that. Now we are going to have a second panel that is called Current Challenge, Best Practice and Future Perspectives in Research, Healthcare and Patient Support. As it was said in the previous roundtable, long COVID is not just a medical issue. Is a complex condition that affects physical health, mental well-being, and of course we need specialized care. Long COVID clinics with multidisciplinary teams, doctors, therapists. Rehabilitation, I think, is crucial. Many people with long COVID struggle with physical weakness and cognitive challenge. For me, it was very important from the keynote speech to find out that pre-Omicron variants were more harmful than post-Omicron or Omicron. And I was affected with pre-Omicron twice, and the first one affected me for more than 2-3 months in something that I really didn't recognize very well, but it was affected in my capacity of concentration, in my eyes, in the how to fix the tension and so on. And I was really affected. It was not long COVID for me, but I can imagine how hard it could be for these people suffering these symptoms for a long time, and how increase the risk of disability in some works and under some conditions. So I think that the support is clear, and of course mental support is also should be a part of the plan. Anxiety, depression, and these cognitive difficulties that I also have experienced. So therefore we need, and now I'm talking as a health professional, we need also more engagement from the health professionals community, but in exchange they also need more information, more empowering tools to respond. Teaching patients is important, but also teaching professionals is crucial for a good attention for them. But these are one of the things that we are going to speak in the next panel. So I will call Gemma Torrell Vallespín. Come to the panel, come to your place. I don't know if the numbers are already changed, but I invite all the speakers, Gemma, Dicky De Haan, come on, all of you, Getz Medinger, and Nicole Snyder, all of you. So Gemma is medical doctor and researcher at the Catalan Health Institute. Dicky is director of the patient organization Post-COVID from Netherlands. And Nicole is doctor of veterinary medicine from Long COVID Europe. So we will listen to your views on a set of 3 questions. I also encourage you to have short answers in order to comply with the timing, and give time also in the end for the Q&A round. So for the first question, you have 3 minutes each to answer. So from your own perspective and experience, what are the main challenges today in treating this relatively new condition, and what would you suggest as the best approach to overcome them? And I will start, in this case, for Gemma.
Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here and to share this moment. I've been thinking while the first panel about a lot of things that I have also related in the questions, but I think I want to invite you to think about how the pandemics has hit the health systems, but also the professionals, and that it's the scene where everything is happening now in a system and in professionals that are almost shaken. They are still shaken by the results of the pandemics. And if I think in the challenges, I think that doctors in general, when we think about a treatment, we usually think of a drug. And in the case of long COVID, it may be having a treatment would be, of course, the ideal goal. But the road toward that goal may be long. And for some, it may never arrive, maybe, as we see it in other kind of conditions like this. So in Spanish, however, to treat means also to take care and to attend. So caring means supporting the person to improve their daily life. And I think that this has to be one of the challenges of the health systems, of the healthcare systems. They have the duty to care for, treat and attend people with long COVID. And doing so involves 3 key actions that for me are the strengthening the primary care services, because they are the first access for people, and that's a way of not leaving anyone behind. Strength coordination in the existing healthcare pathways, not creating a new ones, but using and reinforcing the existing pathways. And finally, to continue training professionals on long COVID, and not only clinically, but also with awareness of gender perspective and medical gaslighting. That is one thing that had been said in the other panel, because medical gaslighting and epistemic injustice, that is invalidate what patients said, it's one of the things that is happening and that we see with this and with other similar diseases. And these last 2 are forms of symbolic violence with very real consequences for people. And we have not forget that the health workers are part of society, so they are involved in the same myths, the same misinformation of that society are, but with a different responsibility, and we must tackle that also when we train professionals. And about the strengthening primary care, why I insist on that is that because the diagnostic of long COVID is constructed over the time with multiple visits. So there is a need of a follow-up, and the best level of attention that can follow up the patient is the primary care, because physicians becomes like a witness of this patient illness and then can see how it evolves on the time, during the time, because this is a condition that is fluctuating in the time. So clinically and ethically, and even for research, the follow-up is indispensable, and primary care can afford that kind of follow-up. Second, and only one, the coordination. I will insist. I would put the example of a patient who told me, if I had cancer, it would be easier because all the system know what to do when a person have cancer. But it's not the same with long COVID, no? Because coordination has to reduce that fear of the patient when it enters to the health system also. And it's a duty of every health system in every country to sustain the path of the patient on the system. So it's mostly what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You were very
on time.
Right time. Yeah, nice. So Dicky, the floor is yours.
So first of all, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to this event for having a patient voice here. For 5 3/4 years, we have felt invisible and ignored by the people who make decisions. And to actually feel like we're being listened to and taken seriously is amazing. And yeah, so I just want to say thank you for being here and being part of this event and taking this seriously, because it is a huge issue, not just on an individual level, but on a societal level as well. Just very quickly about cancer. We had a couple of studies that looked at comparing the quality of life impact of long COVID against advanced lung cancer. Both of those found that it was as bad as or worse in terms of quality of life than advanced cancer. And that is not something that your person on the street has any idea about, right? So, main challenges in terms of treating. I think one of the challenges, well, one of the greatest challenges, is this heterogeneity of presentation. We've got over 200 recognised symptoms for long COVID, and associated with this huge constellation of symptoms is a probable heterogeneity of pathology as well. In our keynote speech, you went through a bunch of those possible causes for long COVID. What we're probably going to find is that it's not like, you know, so let's give them 5, right? 5 numbers of possible causes. It's not like someone's going to be just number 1, someone's going to be just number 3. We're going to have a bit of 2 and a bit of 4 in one person, a bit of 1, 3 and 5 in another person. It's going to be really difficult to work out what's going on an individual level. So we're also going to need a wide range of treatments when it comes to working out how we treat all these people with a really complex multi-system condition. But before we can work out which ones of those treatments work, we've got to understand what the phenotypes of long COVID are and agree on those across the medical community. And we don't just need a test for long COVID, we kind of need a test that indicates what type of long COVID it might be, and then agree on what type of long COVID that might be too. And then what that means finally is we might be able to put the right trial participants into the right trials so that we can actually get the right results from those trials. We mentioned a couple of trials that have failed famously in the community recently. And is that just because of trial participant selection and having put the wrong people into those trials? There's no point testing viral persistence type people with autoimmunity drugs or vice versa. So this is a huge challenge, I think, for us going forwards in terms of actually generating a set of treatments that we know is going to work and understanding which patients to give what treatments to. I think one of the other challenges with putting together a systemic system that looks at how you research this problem is that, you know, modern evidence-based medicine creates specialists, and it's almost the problem of long COVID needs generalists. And in the absence of that, what we need, how do we bring all of these specialists together to create some coherent, joined-up thinking that means that we can solve this jigsaw puzzle where everybody can only see a different part of it at the same time? How do we manage to, between all of us, all of the specialists, join up their eyes so they can all see the whole puzzle together. And I think that's going to be one of the greatest challenges in terms of working out how we create a set of treatments that are going to be effective for the tens of millions of people suffering with long COVID in Europe at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Now we move to Nicole.
Yes. Okay, not used to. First of all, I would like to address my gratitude that I can represent all the long COVID patients today here. And prior to the Congress, I used the workout that has been established in March. And there is a paper that has been published, and it includes highly promising suggestions. But this is already a pivotal observation. There are always promising suggestions, but in reality, at the level of the patients, little results. On the contrary, we have actually in some countries the possibility that the regulations in regard of long-term sick leave are undergoing amendments that are set to impose greater restrictions. So for long COVID patients, it means they are not yet in, but they are already out. As you can see from the information, I'm a veterinarian, and from a veterinarian pragmatic point of view, long COVID is caused by a virus, a pathogen that has shared features with common cold human viruses, and this is it is zoonosis, and furthermore, it has a spike. So if we take one element after the other, we can already try and figure out some of the features, the disease included. If we effective comparison to veterinary medicine, we find some mechanisms are not really unexpected. It's more over the combination that is new. Recently, there have been publications on a disease called feline infectious peritonitis, which is caused by coronavirus and has a spike virus too. If you want to treat a cat against viral persistence, you have to treat it during 84 days. There have been recently approaches in human medicine on viral persistence, but the treatment has only been run out for 2 to 3 weeks. So if in cats it's already known it's 84, why do we try it in humans only for 2 weeks? Another approach is that in feline infectious peritonitis, there's a possibility that there's an underlying autoimmune cause. And this is an autoimmune cause that could also be responsible for long COVID. It has not yet been taken in consideration. When I talk to other patients on long COVID reunions online, there's always one fact that hits me. Their skin color is always ashen. And only this already indicates that there's a difficulty in blood supply, in blood distribution, oxygen disruption. I do not find it when I look in the most scientific, in the largest part of the scientific literature. Another thing is when long COVID patients go with acute symptoms to an emergency room, and blood results come back perfectly normal, but the nurse is annoyed because the viscosity of the blood is not correct. The blood is dark and does not flow correctly. Why is this not addressed? This is a simple clinical observation. One other thing, to my understanding, that is largely left out is hypoxia. Hypoxia has been proven to be present in the first stage of the acute COVID-19, but later on its importance is mostly neglected. But we have indications, for example, that by means of POTS and dysautonomia, the blood distribution is not even. So you can measure the blood supply or the blood oxygen as often as you want. If the blood does not arrive with the oxygen at the right level in the body, it won't help. And it will push people into anoxia-reoxygenation, formation of oxidative species, and which will unfold within the body the deleterious effects. So, to my understanding, long COVID is not necessarily something completely new. It is a combination of 4 or 5 main issues that work together depending on the individual predisposition and evolving over time. So there won't be a possibility to find one marker, because in one patient it will be this, in another patient it will be that. And so long COVID is moreover an immense flow chart, and every patient has other parts of this disease. So there might not be another option than symptomatic treatment.
Very interesting reflections. We are going to a second question. We have seen that initiatives led by patients have often filled in the gaps left by institutions. What role do patients play today in research, healthcare, and advocacy on long COVID? Do you think this role is also appropriate? And I will retake to you, and we go in the opposite direction.
Okay. So, due to my honest belief and experience, the answer can only be yes. My opinion as a scientist and a person who has been through long COVID is there's no other systematic approach to address the disease actually. We have had a lot of luck, because in the last 100 years we had no new emergent diseases of such an impact. So we were not prepared for it, and the approach to treatment, therefore, is more difficult. If you take a look at academic research, it's relatively slow, and human medical research has high ethical standards that prohibit trying out treatments and drugs on patients without evidence. There are responsibilities, there are insurances, and other issues to consider. The groups, for example, on social media, where I get the most input, I have to admit, are more reactive and faster in distribution of information. Because initially the patients received only psychosocial support in social media groups because they have not been taken seriously, and the patients have been located distant from each other, so that was the easiest way to gather information and help. The sick have been in pressure to function in everyday life, and they could not afford to be unavailable as mothers, as workers, as people having a role in society, anyhow. For the first waves, that has even been worse, because they have rarely been acknowledged later on, because they had no proof of being infected, and they have had no access to actual health care, which is also my case, I have to admit. Furthermore, the patients are too weak to go to meeting places. They are too weak, and that's one issue and main problem in long COVID. The patients are too weak to defend their interests. They rely on others who will defend their interest, and this without charges, if ever possible. In some long haulers, as your husband, are 5 years in and even longer, and a lot of them feel like the living dead. They have no more expectations, and lately in some groups where there have been people indicating that they would like to commit suicide.
Yeah.
And there are other cases of people in chronic fatigue syndrome and post-exertional malaise that want to go assisted euthanasia.
Okay. So
that's news from within the groups. A lot of from the US, but still. So. In the social media groups, there's a lot of information going on. And in the social media group arrived also the information that it's a German paper, indeed, from 2022, I guess, if I remind it correctly, that about 40% of the long COVID patients have only temporary relief from the vaccination, if 40 experienced none and 20 worsened after the vaccination. So it's very difficult to convince people to get vaccinated with this information. And furthermore, there have been the first people with post-vaccinal damage dropping into the groups. And they are too much to ignore them. It's too much to say it's just, it's not right. I think it's important to acknowledge it.
Okay, very hard words in some cases. You mentioned, before I go with Gemma, you mentioned previously gaslighting. Yeah, we have doctor gaslighting, which is the alternative for the patients. That is.
The alternative is believing in what they are saying and then proving that what can be done, because the experience of the patient is real, and maybe we can't and we don't know where to put it in our knowledge, but the experience is real. So there is nothing there to do, invalidating it or not giving credit to it because the experience is real and it's subjective. We can do nothing about that, and it is what it is. So that's the first thing I would say in that point. But also, when we are asked about the patient initiatives, in my view, there is still a prejudice about patients' ability to take part in both research and healthcare system, and too often they are seen as passive recipients rather than people who hold the valuable and, I think, essential knowledge, because patients bring with them their personal background, that it could be enormous, and their direct experience of illness. And also, they are and have been auditors, unexpected auditors of the systems, of the healthcare systems, because they have lived through its strengths, but also its shortcomings. So ignoring this perspective means ignoring a powerful opportunity for improvement. A private enterprise will never ignore that. So why the public ignore that? Each person also sees the world from a unique position, and reality itself, I think, can be understood as the collective negotiation of a lot of realities. And I think that this is especially true in the case of long COVID. Patients have challenged not only how research is carried out, but also how knowledge is created. In research, I think that the contribution is indispensable. The lived experience of patients helps define priorities, refine research questions, and contextualize findings so they align with their real needs. Patients should not be treated as mere objects of a study, but as partners with the capacity to participate fully in research and decision-making, respecting their times because of the exhaustion and all the symptoms that the colleague has explained before. And as an activist, they are an example. They have used existing mechanisms of dialogue with the healthcare systems and political institutions. They don't fill the gaps. They point where the gaps are because they have fallen into them. So that's why they point these gaps. They have demanded that governments and health authorities take the responsibility for addressing these gaps. They have not filled them. They interpel us to take the responsibility for addressing them. Let me share with you two short examples in Catalonia and Spain. Between 2021 and 2022, for example, the patient group work with the Catalan Government Secretary of Participation, that is one of these mechanisms of dialogue in Catalonia. Their efforts led to the official recognition of long COVID by the Department of Health, the drafting of clinical guidelines, national clinical guidelines, and the creation of training programs for healthcare professionals. Unfortunately, a change of government weakens this collaboration. That is something that sometimes happens. And at the national level, long COVID organizations in Spain promoted a parliamentary proposal to classify persistent long COVID as a complex chronic condition. And this was approved by the Congress of Deputies in July 2025, integrating long COVID in the specific care pathways already existing. This achievement showed the power of patient participation when there are established and known mechanisms for participation and when there is a real commitment from the governments and institutions. Patients are agents of change, and not only for their cause, but for the good of all the causes that can come in the future. And their life experience is not just a valid, but it is an indispensable way of building a healthcare system that truly meets people's needs. So don't forget that.
Okay. Get to you.
So I think just want to look at this in a couple of different ways. The first one was at the start of the pandemic, where sort of the patient roles in everything from research to health, sort of trying to manage their own healthcare and advocacy was absolutely key. You know, the patients named the condition long COVID in the first place. As patients, we were doing our own research into the condition before doctors would even acknowledge that it existed. I did a dozen of my own patient-led studies. Within 2 or 3 days on social media, I could have an N of 2,000, and I could ask some really powerful questions that we all had about what the hell was going on with us. So early on, patient involvement was absolutely key. Where are we at now? Well, I think patients are still very, very important in research, but they need to be a critical part of the way that projects are built as opposed to an afterthought. It's also patients who are still suffering with long COVID don't naturally fit in terms of just their own ability to have as much cognitive time and energy as the project might demand from them, which is why the project needs to be designed with their specific health requirements in mind. Even in terms of like, well, how many hours is this going to take? How capable are they? If they spend 10 hours a week working on this research project, well, that's actually all 40 hours of their week because that 10 hours requires 30 hours of pacing. So whatever else they were going to do is now gone. Any ability to earn money that they had or any, you know what I mean? So it's you can't just treat them like, in a sense, ordinary people, sadly, because they have a very special set of requirements. When it comes to healthcare, we're still seeing patients going out on a limb to try and get treatments that the community and the social networks are saying works, and patients are trying all sorts of mad stuff, and that is not good. There is an urgency that is required from the research establishment, the medical establishment, to try and actually get some effective trials moving along at a slightly faster rate than they ordinarily do. And with the right political will and funding, that can happen. We saw it in the UK with the recovery trial in acute COVID. Within a year, we found out that dexamethasone worked, right? If this actually had the right political will to do something like we had for acute COVID, we could do something for long COVID. Because until then, patients are going to be going out there and they're going to be taking whatever they can get their hands on that Bob off the forum said worked for him. And that's not a very good place to be in. And as for advocacy, I think it's still absolutely critical that we as patients continue to let the people who make the decisions know that this is still a problem. And for everybody else out there, that long COVID isn't going away. Just because you had COVID 4 times before and you were okay afterwards doesn't mean the 5th time you're not going to get long COVID too. Everybody thinks, oh, it's not a problem for me. Every time you catch COVID, it's like Russian roulette. You just don't know which cylinder the bullet's in when you spin that chamber. So it's on all of those parts, from research to healthcare to advocacy, I think patients are still absolutely core to all of them. And it's just, I get passionate about it, right? Because this has been the last 5.5 years of my life, and it's just tore up everything I thought I knew about myself and about the way the world would react to a problem like this. And so I'm passionate about trying to engage some change to help the tens of millions of people who are suffering.
Okay, you mentioned a very important thing. This after fifth COVID, you can have long-term COVID. So it also brings me to another question: Is there any way to stratify risk or something like that? Being vaccinated maybe can reduce the risks, but other individualized conditions or other health conditions. Do you know if there is any? I'm not saying something sure, but any theory about that?
So we have some, we talked about in the keynote speech about some of the pre-existing conditions that make you more likely to develop COVID. Not that it's a pre-existing condition, but if you're female, you're more than twice as likely to get long COVID as if you're male. Vaccination seems to halve your risk of subsequently developing long COVID, but we don't know how that affects vaccination you might have had in 2021 versus getting COVID now. Is there any relevance there anymore? We just don't know. Any family history of autoimmunity might be implicated, but it's just ifs and buts and maybes, and there's a whole list of things that might make a difference. But as it comes to if you're someone who's had it 4 times, and maybe it's the 5th time that does it, you're probably not in one of those people who are at super high risk in the first place. It's just absolute pot luck at that point.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the answer. I think we have time enough for the third one, but could be the answer even more short. What forms of support are most urgently needed, not only for national, but also at the European level? And now you start.
Okay. So I think, for me, what gets me upset is the fact there just seems to be nobody who wants to talk about long COVID on a political level. I think we've only had one health minister in Germany who spoke about it. And beyond that, it doesn't seem like anywhere else anybody wants to talk about it, because there isn't... Everybody who doesn't have it doesn't want to hear about it. And that's the problem. How do we get those people who don't want to hear about it realizing that this is an important issue? And I think that's the greatest challenge. One of the things that jumped out to me from that first presentation was that the cost to GDP in Germany was 1.5%. That's 65 billion euros. If you have a problem in your society where you are losing 65 billion euros of GDP, maybe just throw a billion at it, and that would already be like thousands of percent more than is being put at this problem. So I guess for me, it's just what can we do to try and change the narrative around this in a way that creates a sense of urgency and creates a sense of importance around this subject that just starts turning some of these cogs of this machinery that are required to pump out some treatments at the other side that might give people their lives back.
Okay, Emma?
For me, one of the main forms of support is the one addressing the economic impact for long COVID patients, individual and collective, for the system also, but individually. Most in the main part, because that long COVID affects more women between 30 and 50 years old and in their working and reproductive ages, and by fluctuations of symptoms which lead to intermittent sick leaves and unpredictable sick leaves and everything. So I think that to attend to this part of the impact of the long COVID has to be one of the most urgent needs, because it can be a lot of people who's put into an economic insecurity. So it will also interfere in their health and in their future health, the mental, but also the physical mental health. As you know, that the social determinants of health impact, and the way we live and the conditions we have on living impacts a lot in our health. So I think that is 5 years later is one of the things that is coming to the surface, and that it's like an iceberg that we don't know when it ends or it will end. So I think that also the system has to assess the working disability and has to take that, to tackle that, because most people lacked an objective diagnostic test to validate their symptoms. And this is yet another example of medical gaslighting, but in the working camp or in the working field. So there are no altered tests, nothing happens to you, so you are able to work. So that's an awful narrative to follow, and that's a thing that is happening now and that we see at the healthcare centers. So I agree with Guess in the fact that we have to change the narrative, or we have to find a narrative to put that thing that is scary for everyone, but we have to attend to it, because 1.5 of the GDP is a lot, but that will cost money, but doing otherwise will cost more money and things more than money, that is the trust of the citizens in this and the next pandemics and the next long COVID that can happen. So I don't know how also, but I think that establishing a medium-term plan also of care for people with long COVID, properly funded, implemented and evaluated, and that includes research, stronger healthcare systems and training, and also public information campaigns, as we said, can be one way of addressing long COVID in the next years, and give some hope to people that something is being doing to sustain them and their suffering. So I think that the main thing is how changing the narrative and how make this money transform in trust then. Okay.
So to my understanding, specific diagnostic tools for examining long COVID patients must be developed and implemented. We need probably other vaccines too, because it's probably not the best to use the spike, and various regions. There are other concepts known, for example, for Primocell. That's a vaccine available in cats again, And there's a need for patients that is clearly expressed that they want to have access to treatment by Paxlovid in case, or medicaments like Paxlovid in case of acute infection. Most of them are really panicking by the thought of getting another time infected, because for most of them, conditions worsen afterwards. There is a huge need for understanding and acknowledgement by the patients, and there's also a huge need for practitioners to be formed, because a lot of general practitioners are insecure about what they can do and what they can't. So the medical staff and the doctors have clearly to get better training, keeping in mind that they are always very overwhelmed with the things going on and administrative procedures. Then there's another important point: the people that are infected, the long COVID patients, they should be able to continue pacing. Pacing is a very important step. There have been, during a long time, long COVID patients being pushed in activity, and that might have jeopardized their possibility to heal. If we consider hypotheses like hypoxia and mitochondrial damage, a strained exercise might hinder them to heal at any time soon. And again, I think something that's happening around COVID or long COVID is there's no indication or perspective of healing. But indeed, and this is good news, it seems that around about 10% of the patients are able to heal spontaneously. And instead of always focusing on the diseased and sick people, it would probably be another approach to look what's happening with the people that got rid of long COVID, because probably there are factors that can help to understand how long COVID works and help to treat others and help to get rid of long COVID finally. I have had long COVID. I'm one of the 10%, and that's why I'm here. And I think it is very interesting to compare, for example, vaccines, to compare the side effects, to see if there are differences that permit to conclude which mechanisms are involved in the virus, in long COVID itself. And yes, that's a thing. I guess it's a positive note to say there's a possibility to heal and that we shouldn't forget.
Okay, this is also a positive note. So we conclude the panel, but we had time for Q&A, very short time, but if you want to raise any question, stand up your finger, say I want to speak, and introduce yourself. Okay, please introduce yourself. You can.
I introduced me in the first panel, so yes, I have studied physics in informatics. I'm a member of the European Physical Society. What I am only a short question to Madame Dr. Veterina. How is the connection between COVID by the animals, cats, dogs, and other animals, and their connectivity to the COVID for people, for human being? How are the research in this domain?
So it's a coronavirus. Coronaviruses exist amongst all species. So you can simply compare it, and SARS-CoV-2 has always been considered to be a zoonosis. So a simple approach, as humans are at least mammalians too, is to compare the effects that you can find in other species. To my understanding, SARS-CoV-2 is not transferable to humans. It's really related to the human species coming from bats, supposedly, and so therefore there's no possibility of a transfer between a dog or a cow and a human. In this case, in other cases, it might be possible, and that's something important to keep in mind in regard of other pandemics.
Zoonosis, always. Any other question? No more questions. So we have a clear outcome, and that we need more efforts at the European level, member state level. We need more efforts in order to obtain diagnosis, how to treat the patients, in how we respond. I'm saying we as a policymaker, but also as a health professional, how to respond to the people that come to a clinician, to emergency room, and say, I have these kind of problems, and there are not concrete answers from the side of the health system. So we need more and more, and of course, raise the awareness and change the narrative. You said very clear before. So now I call to my colleague Laura Ballarín to the closing remarks. We are going to leave her alone with the risk. Laura.
Well, thank you, everybody. I think we have had a really important, fruitful debate for the last 2 hours. I want to thank, first of all the panelists, the audience here and online, also Nicolas and the STOA team. And I think that many takeaways we can extract from today's debate. So first of all, that navigating long COVID and its response is not an easy task due to its heterogeneous nature and the different approach followed by different state members. We see substantial gaps in diagnosing this condition, no harmonized definition, still a lot of problems with data sharing. You gave a quite important headline on GDPR. So, well, I think that it's good that we take into account the challenges in order, as policymakers, to address possible solutions. I think that after today's workshop, we are able to know a bit more about the efforts of the scientific community that it's undertaking to address the long COVID. So a lot has been done, but we have much more to be done. So lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic and long COVID are being used to advance research in the field of pandemic risk infection diseases. And it's imperative that we don't repeat mistakes from the past, and that we have all systems in place that can protect our citizens in the present and in the future. So if we prepare now, we can protect better our citizens, and you explained well, right? So it's not only about giving solutions now to prepare for the coming pandemics, but also changing the narrative. As I said at the beginning, the issue is not enough high on the political agenda because, well, there is a lot of understanding that, well, I just passed that, we are safe. Well, we are not safe. I think that it's also another lesson that we need to take. So even if we are vaccinated, even if we passed several COVIDs, we are exposed to this illness. And even if we are not exposed ourselves, it's also a duty as a society and as the international and European community. So I think it's good to take stock of the initiatives that our institutions at national and European level are implementing to counter the impact of long COVID on our societies, and also including the economic burden, strain on healthcare systems, and effects on patients' quality of life. As we said, it's a multifaceted phenomenon, and we need to address the different issues. Health workers, it has been also addressed, are the first line of response, and in many cases the key agents of change. It means that also they have a responsibility to counter this disinformation and these myths. So we have to protect them because they are the frontliners, but also empower and work with them as allies in order to give proper answers to the patients that they are treating. I just want to address a bit the economic impact and how can we face in terms of European community the challenge. I think that, as I said briefly at the beginning, I think that we need to advance on promotion of flexible work arrangements in remote and part-time to keep people in jobs while managing their health, and also advance, I think that it has been said, on the personalized medicine, because every patient is different, and in this disease, I think it's even more obvious, right? That we don't have the diagnosis is difficult, the effects and the symptoms are different, and the cure probably it should be different. So how can we address the personalized medicine? How can we integrate the new technologies, AI? I think that we can have another workshop to address this, because it's another important topic. How to address from the social security perspective. You have been mentioning it, right? How recognizing long COVID as a chronic disease, potential disability in some cases, is crucial to simplify the access to income support. And Spain has been doing that, and other countries, but also having a European definition will help to some countries that are lagging behind. Strengthen mental health services. I think it's also important. Besides the physical, terrible dimension, we need also to address the mental health dimension and pillar, so psychological support to accompany. And you have been saying that a lot, putting patient groups in policy design, so to ensure that the real needs are met. So, of course, it has to be combined with scientific community, with the experts, but as it is so unknown, as it is a new disease, and many of the symptoms and the realities are unknown, I think that more than in other cases, a patient approach-driven patient-driven approach, it's very much needed. So Finally, I think that we have learned very much about the role of the different institutions, the associations, the patients, and especially that we all share a common goal, which is to put light, to put hope to this community, and especially looking to the futures, because I think patients are asking for recognition, not pity. They are asking for solutions, not sympathy, and Europe must deliver. So it is our turn. Thank you so much, and I hope we can continue the debates and the work. We have foreseen a study besides these events, and we will continue the dialogue with all of you. Thank you so much.